Welcome back for episode 3 of Eye of the Storm, a Guelph Storm podcast with myself, Ryan Drury, voice of the Guelph Storm on Rogers TV. We've got another great special guest. I'm very pleased to be joined by the general manager of your Guelph Storm, Mr. George Burnett. George, how are you? How's summer been? How's training camp been?
Summer's gone by quickly. Camp's been great. Working through a few minor injuries here right now, as expected at this time of the year, and I think the guys and the staff are anxious to get going.
You know, George, before we look forward at what should be a very exciting season for the Guelph Storm, I think you've got a great roster put together here. It should be an exciting year. Let's look back at last year, where obviously the team struggled a bit out of the gate, had a tough stretch coming into that Christmas break. Some marquee trades went down, and leading into and after the trade deadline, your team went on an absolute tear. They had an excellent finish and managed to secure the 6th overall seed in the conference, boistered by a lot of unbelievable play from some guys that you acquired and some guys that really found their stride on the roster in the latter part of the season. How do you look back on last year and the tough start coming through Christmas, the trades you made, and then the team's incredible finish to the year?
Well, as you say, a tough start. That's being kind. It was a lot worse than a tough start. We struggled in a lot of areas, and I think we made some strides when things settled down. It's not easy. So much happened early in the year, and again, it's not easy to have all those adjustments and changes that were required. But we did and moved on. I give Chad and his staff full marks for eventually getting our group settled down and playing more to the way we were anticipating. And we did make a few adjustments, but I think in general, the kids are, and I see that this year, the kids were, I think, learned some pretty valuable lessons about the way things went last year. And we've tried to remind them that it's fine to be, with all the pundits and all the ratings and all those types of things that don't mean a whole lot if you're thinking about results as opposed to the details of every day's practice and preparation off the ice and be ready to play. We're going to get ourselves into some trouble. So we've had a good camp. I think this year I look at the group that we've that has returned. We're down to our number fairly quickly here. We're just an extra forward and extra D at this point in time, and with 13 and 7. Everybody's getting a chance to play. The kids are playing a ton, playing well. The older guys that you're expecting to play well have played hard, and whether they've been involved too much in the scoring or not, they're working and competing every shift. And again, the team we played this past weekend, Mississauga, is a highly competitive club, and one of the reasons why we play them because I think it shows a lot about where our competitiveness is at. And one thing I would say about our group is that our kids, the 6 or 7 of them 8 of them that are going through this kind of for the first time, there wasn't one of them that looked concerned about the small rink and the dark rink and the big bodies and the banging and the crashing, and everybody seemed to be comfortable. So it is exciting, and then you see the level of skill that they bring to the table. You combine that with their desire to play and their competitiveness. I think it means for some good stuff moving forward.
You know, George, I would describe you as a hockey lifer. I mean, you played in this league, had a great playing career. You've coached at just about every level there is to coach at. You've coached in the NHL, and you've been an executive as well. I mean, you're 4th all time in wins behind an OHL bench. You know every little facet of what it takes to run a successful club, especially at this level. Last year, and Chad Wiseman, the head coach of your club, was the first guest on this show, and he had some really interesting comments reflecting back on the struggles of the early part of the season last year. And, you know, other teams that were, I would argue, in somewhat worse shape than you guys were at the time, made coaching changes. There were a couple shuffles around the league here and there. You did not. And there were rumors flying around for sure after a tough start that maybe you would switch away from Chad, and you didn't. You stuck by him, and you've always struck me as a very calm and measured guy in your approach to running a club. You're obviously very well rewarded for that. What is it that you think makes Chad such a great head coach, jumping away from being an assistant the year prior?
Well, I think, first of all, difficult circumstances. Scott had some health issues and unfortunately wasn't able to stay on board. And when you're 2 games into the regular season, and that's probably about 7 or 8 weeks of time with the kids, and through September in particular, lots of kids are away, lots of things are changing, and then to have that, nobody anticipated that, and that's unfortunate. We're thankful that he's everything's going in the right direction for him, and he's still heavily involved here. We talk every day, and I think that relationship's been strong. And one of the reasons, for things to be better is that relationship with Scott, between Scott and I, is very strong, and our communication is very strong. I think Chad has paid some dues. I enjoyed working with him when he was an assistant as well as an associate coach. I think he's always had some, lots of responsibility, but it's the first opportunity to start from a full summer of preparation, to get through an entire training camp where you're, kind of, he was heavily involved before, but now it's kind of his baby, and unfortunately, he's got me as a former coach, always evaluating things as a coach. That's just natural from the years doing it. But I think it's been a healthy relationship where we can share some ideas. I can challenge him the odd time. He can challenge me. We can have that kind of a conversation and get things make difficult decisions. I think the more difficult our decisions are, the better we're going to be. And he's had a playing career. He's played in our league. He's I think his work ethic is very strong. I think the group that we've put together here, including Robbie Collins and now Dan Fitzgerald, with Rob Beattie returning, Corey Locke returning, Ryan Lonsberry, I think it's a real nice mix of guys, all eager to play their part. There's no big egos. It's kind of a we approach, and I'm here to support and guide and provide some. If they, some days I'm picking up kids from school, and some days I'm, running errands or doing whatever. But all those things need to get done. We've got some great people in place, and I want them to focus on getting our team prepared and making sure when the regular season starts that we're ready to go, because we don't want to experience again what we went through early last year. And I'm not anticipating making a lot of changes. It's not something you start out the year doing and wanting to do. But I like the group that we've assembled. Are we real deep in our experience in a couple positions? No. But I think in the early going, I've always used Halloween as a kind of a time where you measure your team, you measure your opponents, you measure the conference and the league. It's a unique year this year with Saginaw hosting the Memorial Cup, and they're going to be all in. So I'm not saying it does change anything, but you have to at least consider, does that change anything? We've got some teams that I think are a little under the radar here right now, some very close to us geographically that had big graduations, but I think are going to be surprisingly strong with some of the changes they made in the off season too. So there's some very strong clubs. I look at the group returning in Owen Sound. London's going to be strong. I think Erie takes a big step forward, no question. I think Kitchener is going to be a lot stronger than people think at this particular time, and that's just the 4 teams that we play the most. So it's a fun time. A 20-year-old can change the direction of a club. Goaltending performance, a guy falling back that wasn't expected, an injury. We're dealing with an injury to Cam Allen right now, and that's a massive blow to our blue line, and the reason that we added Braden Hislop, who's been terrific for us. So you have to adjust on the fly. But with Cam, I know there isn't anybody that will outwork Cam Allen. He'll probably be back before he's supposed to be back, just because of his habits and his desire to get back. I know he has to be out a certain length of time to have the shoulder heal properly, but it's going to be like trading for an all-star defenseman in January or February. And so we've seen that in years previous when we had some success where we had some guys hurt long term but came back late in the year. And it's quite a jolt to your lineup when you can add a player like that later in the season.
It really is, and we're wishing Cam the best. I'm bummed out that he's not going to be there on opening night because he's one of the most fun players to watch on the team. And of course, you can see my Capital stuff adorning me behind me. I was very happy that he landed in Washington in the NHL draft, and well deserved for him. And you talk about tough decisions, and that's just part of the everyday life of an executive in this league, George. One of them, and you brought one of them up, is overagers and who to keep, who to let go. It's always tough to kind of pick and choose who's going to stay around. You've always placed a lot of value on having good ones around. Last year, you had 3 great ones in Murray, McFarland, and Captain Cooper Walker, who have all moved on. This year, you've got a trio of pretty good ones too. And you mentioned Braden Hislop, a guy you acquired in the offseason. Let's start with him. Why was he a guy that you maybe targeted out of North Bay to bring into the fold here?
Well, I think if we go back to being uncertain about where Cam was at, and if Cam had a start of the season, we may not have made that trade. But as we've been doing some homework on Braden and then knowing his availability, we're very pleased to have him here. He's I think when you talk about the overage position, I think more than anything, you got to have good people. And if they're not good guys and good citizens, I think things often don't go the way you anticipate. I think that the group we had last year, as you say, they didn't necessarily lead the team in scoring, but they did a lot of things well. The details were taken care of, and they made everybody better around them. I like this year's group, and Braden's he's played alongside Quinn Boucher to this point in the preseason and through training camp, provided some great leadership and guidance to him and every other young player. He's not a guy that says a whole lot, but when he does, I think there's a lot of people listening, and they should be. He's had an opportunity to play in 2 strong organizations in Saginaw and North Bay. Rob Collins has some, trains him a little bit in the summertime and has him off the ice, on the ice doing some skill stuff. We had a little inside track there on with Rob as far as his character and the type of young man he is, and it's exactly what we needed for our blue line.
Let's talk about another guy that's going to play his final OHL year here, and a guy that you acquired as well in Chandler Romeo, who really fit in so well with the group right away, and just a steady guy out there. There's nothing noisy about his game. He's got a really high panic threshold. He never seems to be rattled out there, and he always does the little things right. He's fit in really well to your group as well, George.
Well, he has. I think when he first came in last year from Sarnia, he was real hungry to play, and he chanced to home. He lives at home, chance to play in front of family and friends. There's some added pressures to do that. I believe that he's determined to find his way in the game, and he's dealt with some injuries. He dealt with the COVID year. He's dealt with a couple of significant injuries during his time. I think the best thing for him and at this time in his young career is to have a full, healthy, consistent year. And it'll be interesting to see what type of opportunities are there for him at the end. He's a big man, skates well, moves well, and when he's playing his best hockey, he can make a big contribution at this level for sure.
Finally, your other OA, a guy that has become a fan favorite, and I'm sure if you've heard the clips of us calling his goals a favorite of us in the booth, and that's Braden Bowman. We affectionately refer to him as the Bone Collector. He always seems to find the dirty goals, and he scores some beautiful ones too, but I just love the kid's compete level. He only played 54 games last year. He had over 70 points, over 30 goals. I think if he can stay healthy, he can score 50. He's a pro player to me, George. And I know he's been to some NHL camps last 2 off seasons. I pity the other NHL teams that don't eventually give this kid a chance. I think he's a pro player. Tell us a little bit about Bonesy and all the different dynamics that he brings to your room.
Well, Bones is he's certainly one of our leaders, if not our leader. We have a number of them, but he's a year ago when we had a bunch of kids around, he was kind of like the Papa Bear of the group, and everybody seemed to gravitate to him. But he's I think he's now had his 3rd opportunity at a pro camp level. I think he's learned some very valuable lessons. You talked about his injury. He's had 2 terrific years for us, but hasn't played a full season. He's had a significant injury in both of those years, of 6 or 7 weeks in length. And despite that, he's still put up some great numbers. I agree with you. I believe that he will play pro hockey. I don't think there's any question that he's going to be a real good player in the American Hockey League. And if things continue to develop, he may turn into, one of those guys that, as you say, a lot of people would have wished they had a crack at him. I'll give him full marks is that, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school, but I think he went to camp and got some great feedback, and I think he's made even some more additional very specific adjustments about his strength and fitness that I think have made a big contribution or a big change to his game, and I think that will allow him to probably stay healthier and be able to play at the level we've seen from him over an entire season, not a smaller number of games. So I think that consistency and we all agree, he's scored at every level, and he'll continue to score goals. There's no question about it. But I think he does have that ability to score a lot, and I think if his work stays high and his strength and fitness have improved, I think it's going to allow him to be stronger for a longer period of time, and only hitting his stride when we get to March and April and playoff time, and continue to put up big numbers for our club.
We love watching him play. He's such a fun kid to watch. He's a classic glue guy, it looks like, on the bench. And, I just love, again, the way he plays, the way he scores his goals. It's the way he collects his points, George, that's so impressive to me, and why I agree. I believe he's a pro player. If not to compare him to, but just, being a Caps fan, he reminds me a little bit of TJ Oshie, just a grindy guy that goes out there and he plays hard and always seems to chip in with a big goal in big moments. Let's talk a bit about the import draft this year. And you selected 2 very interesting prospects out of Europe. And let's start with the big Swede. I'm very intrigued to watch Vilmer Ulriksson. He is a horse. He's 6'6". He's a big kid. And I think that he could really scare some teams as a net front presence on the power play and throwing his weight around. What drew you to Vilmer to select him and bring him to Guelph?
Well, it's not common that you see talented Swede players willing to come. They often stay at home and play in the SHL, and so through our some contacts and relationships that they have, we learn more and more about him. It was interesting. He showed up the first day he showed up here. The back door was open, so he walked right in ahead of his ride, and I had my back turned, and he said hello, and I turned around, and there was no space in the door. All you could see was this monster standing in the door, and I think he's first of all, he's a really interesting guy. He's very well mannered, and I think he's really excited to be here, first and foremost, and again, when you're that big, you think you're gonna, maybe you've got a guy that's going to be a real physical dominant player. Well, he could be, but I don't. I think his demeanor is such. The goalie scored the other night in air, National Hockey League type shot. I think he's still learning about what he can be as a player, and one of the reasons why his camp was willing and interested to come to North America. I think I know it was a little different for him playing in rink 2 at the Paramount Center last week. It was dark and not a whole lot bigger than my office, so it's there's not a lot of room to move there, and he handled it very well, as all of our kids did. But he as a big man, first time playing on the small ice, he handled it very well. Didn't shy away from the contact, and made some things happen. And I thought he handled himself and played even a better game in air on Sunday afternoon. So I think just finding his way, being in some of those rinks, going into an Owen Sound rink or into a London in front of 9,000 people, those are all experiences that everybody has to learn and experience to get better. He seems to have some versatility in his game to be able to play all 3 forward positions. He's willing to. We've seen him block shots and has a real strong stick to play defensively. And we like it from the standpoint that he's willing to play defensively. And I think there's a lot of things that can blossom from an offensive standpoint. Taking pucks to the net, be a net front guy at some point in time. He scored off the flank on the power play the other day, and that's not probably where you would look at a guy that's 6'6" and to place him, but he's there and he did extremely well. So you kind of probably first thought would be, okay, go have this guy stand in front of the net, and that's the easy thing to do. Let's find out if he has some other skills, and so far he's showing signs of having those skills, and he's played with a number of different players. I think the consistency of which he's playing, Jet Luchenko hasn't played just yet because we're making sure he's 100% healthy, and he may sit this weekend one more time, and then we know he's fully healthy because he's had a terrific summer, looks great, and we want things to go well, have no setbacks. So, but I think that might be a combination of guys. You see those two guys together, and with Jet's speed and his ability to move and distribute the puck, it might be an interesting combination as we go through the season.
Let's talk about your other addition via the import draft, and really leads to a larger conversation about your goaltending, which is such an important position. George, obviously Braden Gillespie is going to be part of the team again this year after stepping in as a young kid who had a really good season in air and stepped in, and Tony Saxon kind of dubbed him Friday Night Lights, and we adopted the nickname, and he really, really did well, getting thrown into a lot of pressure situations. And he's going to be joined by a kid that you added out of Slovakia, and Damian Slavik, who impressed a lot of scouts internationally and in tournaments back at home, some of which he was playing against men. Tell us a little bit about Damian and what you foresee these two young men doing in your blue paint this year.
Well, you're right with Braden. He came in difficult circumstances last year. We didn't have a lot of other options at that, and he certainly deserved the opportunity to come in and play a little bit. And when he got here, he played pretty well, and made a decision probably a little easier for us to keep him here. I know it wasn't an easy thing to take him out of the air lineup because he was probably there. I think he was their most valuable player, even though he wasn't there for the last part of the season. So he played well there. He earned his opportunity. I think as an undersized goaltender in today's game. I don't think that's bothered him one day as far as his preparation goes. So he's handled himself well. He looks like he's fired up and ready to play this year. I think the best scenario is to have someone that can push them, and they can push each other. So far, Damian's been terrific. He's battling a little bit of soreness here right now and may not play this weekend, but in the game he played in Mississauga last week, he handled himself. They threw some stuff at us early in the game in the first 6-7 minutes where he had to make some big saves, or the game probably would have been over at that time. And that's what you look for. He was good through camp. And he's a little quieter, a little more unassuming than Vilmer, but seems to fit in nicely. He and Braden Hislop live together, and it's been a great combination. Braden's provided a little leadership and support, and he seems to have handled it quite well. Big, athletic. Everybody wants a big goaltender these days. I know in our homework that we did leading up to the import draft, there was a couple of NHL teams that had him on their watch list, so to speak. They'd spent some time with him, evaluating him for the NHL draft. He wasn't selected, but I would suggest on what's been seen so far that he'll continue to be a draft prospect, even though he's been a year through the draft. And Braden will just continue to do what he does, and that's want to be in there every night and be a lot of fun to watch and compete his tail off.
It's going to be great to watch those two battle it out for starts. I think you've got two guys with very high ceilings in terms of their talent level. One guy who we know whose ceiling is very high, and I don't like to put pressure on guys, but I just think this highly of him. I really think that he could lead the league in scoring. Matt Poitras, a second-round pick of the Boston Bruins, who was excellent last year. He had 95 points. He had a boatload of assists. He came too shy of breaking the O-Dogs franchise record. I'm sure he's probably got his sights quietly set on maybe taking another run at that, George. But him and Max Nemesnikov, alongside Braden Bowman, they formed one of the most potent top lines in the league going down the stretch last year. Matt and Max, we haven't talked about them yet. It's rare that you see a trade between teams work out so well for both sides. Pastajov played very well for Sarnia, but Max came in And after not necessarily getting a lot of, opportunities in top end minutes in Sarnia, I mean, he was a former 3rd overall pick. He came in and instantly seemed to become a fan favorite. Everybody, I saw a lot of Nemesnikov jerseys on little kids at the Sleeman Center last year. They fell in love with this guy. What is it that makes those two guys so special in your lineup creating offense?
Well, two different players. Potsy can score, we know that, but I think his ability to distribute the puck is special, and amongst the elite in the league for sure. He also has a competitive streak in him. I think his he was an outstanding, or probably still is an outstanding lacrosse player, but I think that tenacity about winning puck battles against guys that are bigger than you are, and just wanting to have the puck on a stick all the time is when he's in a space that he can get to, he's one of the best, and there's no question. And I think his ability to distribute, Braden Bowman's ability to finish, Max has shown a competitiveness that you don't anticipate. I mean, I don't even think about him as being a smaller player. He's his body, he has a man's body. He's big, strong in the legs and the lower half to win battles, to get to the tough areas on the ice. He did have a great start for us last year. It was, did we anticipate him scoring 40 goals? Probably not, but it's wonderful that he did, and that's what sometimes a new opportunity provides, is just that, a chance to to play with different players, and to have a different opportunity, and maybe a few more minutes. Who knows? But it's nice to see kids respond. And as I said, if those kids are together as a threesome this year, I don't want to tip our hands too much, but if they have played a little bit together, but so far, but if they're together and they stay healthy, there's an opportunity and a chance for them to do some very special things together, and be one of the more established and potential for offense lines in our league. But I think they're all willing to do the work, and the details of preparation have been strong so far. All seem to be motivated, all going to pro camps next week, and highly motivated to do so. And I think that they'll come back hungry and even more determined when that finally happens.
Yeah, two of the most exciting and electric players in the league. And Max, boy, it was just fun watching him pop off. As soon as he threw the Storm Burgundy on, he became a water bug out there. He is such a fun player to watch, and seems like a really fun kid too. George, before I let you go, speaking of kids, a pretty exciting group of new draftees, and Quinn Beauchene was our second guest on this show. Really nice kid, very reserved, but certainly I wouldn't describe him as nervous. He's a very confident young man. And obviously Will McFadden, Parker Snellgrove, and Ryland Singh, guys that have all signed standard agreements, a really interesting and unique collection of talent that bring a lot of different skill sets. I remember talking to you on draft night, and you were extremely excited about getting this group of young men. Tell us a little bit about each of them and what you foresee that they could bring potentially this year to the lineup.
Well, they all bring something different. There's no question. They're a combination of size and they all have skill. They all have real good skill, and I believe that they're all very smart, hockey smarts, and can play with good players. Some were concerned that we drafted two young right shot defensemen, and I know that on draft day it was a very easy choice to select Quinn. He's amongst the elite players in the draft available, and clearly amongst the elite defensemen drafted. I think he does have a confidence about him that you would expect from a top draft pick, and from a young man with his with his short history, or what he's accomplished in his young career. He wants to be in the key situations. He wants to be on the ice when the game's on the line, and it's been a nice start. He's banged up a little bit here right now, so we may not see him this weekend, but we want to get him healthy, and I know he'll make a veteran contribution to our club this year, even as a first year player. When we talk about Ryland, and again being a right shot, it was just such an easy decision for us to make. We watched him a lot late in the season. His smarts and his poised with the puck at the top of the power play and just in making plays under pressure. And I watched the way he played in these first two games, and again in small rinks against a very competitive team, and he didn't flinch once. And that's not easy when you're talking about a young man that's coming in, and he's going to make it real tough for us not to have him here all the time, let alone part time. So I know that he's an interesting young man, but his desire, his preparation, and very focused on being a top student, but also being a top player. And it's a lot of fun to have them both. And I think it sets our blue line up to be real strong for the next few years. The other two guys that were drafted, I'll pick apart. Parker, a little bigger. Will maybe not as big in stature, but similar to Max and some of those big lower half, compete, get underneath guys, but a real smart, intelligent, great stick, willingness to go against the guys that are a little bigger and stronger, or a lot bigger and stronger. And all he was exceptional at both ends of the rink. Parker's a real good two-way player at all. I think his offense is a little underappreciated. When I watched that London team play last year, and no disrespect to the two guys he played with who are elite players and going to be elite stars in our league, but he did a lot of the heavy lifting in my mind, and that's when I watched them play. He might not have finished with the goal, but he did a lot of work to get the puck to those guys and to come up with pucks and keep them on the cycle. He's sneaky, smart, and skilled. He's scored a couple of goals in the training camp setting that goal scorers can only goal scorers can score, and off the wing and taking pucks wide. His explosive speed is terrific, and I just think it's a nice combination. They've all fit in nicely. Leo Serlin is part of that group as well. We signed him out of training camp. He had a terrific year as a young player in Halliburton last year, and came into camp, and he was the only player we signed out of camp, but he was clearly the best young forward from training camp and deserved to be here. So I think as a group, we're very pleased and energized by what we see, and the future is bright, but our time is a little more now. And I really feel comfortable that those kids can be a part of things in the early going. They're not going to be waiting for 2 or 3 years down the line to make a significant contribution here.
A lot of old returning favorites, a lot of new exciting additions. I think the Guelph Storm are set up for, like I said, a very exciting year. George, I really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us here on Eye of the Storm.
Anytime, Ryan. Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing George Burnett and the rest of the staff at the rink. Remember, you can find this podcast on the Eye of the Storm YouTube channel. You can find it on all your favorite podcast apps. And remember, for all your ticketing needs, go to the Guelph Storm website or visit the box office at the Sleeman Center. We'll see you next week for more Eye of the Storm.